It's a flurry of moves, waiver wire madness around the NFL. Nobody claimed from the 49ers, but they made a big claim for a big defensive tackle. And Marquez Valdes-Scantling, the newest wide receiver for the San Francisco 49ers. More wide receivers on the way. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Coach Crocky. Thanks, everybody, for making this your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This is why you listen to Locked On 49ers every day, because we got days like this where there's just a ton of transactions around the NFL. The 49ers putting together their team. We knew there'd be more moves after yesterday's 53-man roster. That roster looking a little bit different today. Will look different again tomorrow. We'll get into all of it. We heard from Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch about the roster as well, and specifically Jawan Jennings. So a lot of news about wide receivers on today's program. So thanks for tuning in. Make sure you're subscribed up on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. In today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. All right, Croc. Let's start with the signings that have happened, and then we'll get to the practice squad. But the San Francisco 49ers have signed Marquez Valdes-Scantling, the journeyman wide receiver, to a one-year contract, and apparently have some interest in recently released former Niner, former Patriots wide receiver Kendrick Bourne. Highly interested, according to Matt Mayoko. And then John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan on the mic today talking about all of this, spoke about Jawan Jennings, but they also said that they can't do it today, but tomorrow they will re-sign Russell Gage, who they just released. So there you go. 3 potential new wide receivers, 2 for sure we know, 1 already signed, 1 signing tomorrow, and maybe Kendrick Bourne added to the list. So potentially 3 veteran wide receivers and a 4th if Jawan Jennings comes back from his injury anytime soon. And all of a sudden, Niners wide receiver group chock full again of guys who might be able to contribute in week 1. Let's start with Marquez Valdes-Scantling. What do you see for the role for Marquez Valdes-Scantling? Because my initial response was, this dude could, he's classic X wide receiver. He could line up across from Ricky Parasol week 1 and be the starting X wide receiver. And he could also still be off the roster by week 4.
Yeah, so Valdes-Scantling is a guy who's traditionally been a deep ball threat and throughout his career. And if you just look at his stats, and what has he played? 8 seasons, I believe, so far. He's averaging 17.4 yards per reception. So this is a guy that has been known to stretch the field. It hasn't been as much of a high volume type of receiver. So I definitely love the thought of Marquez Valdes-Scantling. I question the role he's playing with the 49ers, unless the 49ers say, well, that's exactly what we're looking for. Not a guy that we're going to go throw the ball to, 5, 6, 7 times a game, but just a guy that potentially may get 2 to 3 opportunities, maybe, per game. And if he only gets 1 opportunity, he has to be okay with that. But I'd say for Valdes-Scantling, he's just happy probably to have a job, be with a good organization, and he's definitely hoping that this lasts a little bit longer than 4 weeks.
Yeah, and I think one of the big things and the big priorities for the 49ers when you only have 10 days to get ready for a football game is to bring in a wide receiver that's familiar with your system. And he's been with Matt LaFleur in Green Bay. That's where he was drafted. In fact, he was part of the same draft class with a guy who was in camp with the 49ers in Equanimeous St. Brown. Marquez Valdes-Scantling and Equanimeous St. Brown. And then there was another wide receiver who was actually the first of the 3 that flamed out faster than all of them that were all drafted. 3 wide receivers drafted, and I think it was what year was that? I don't know what year that was. 2020 draft, maybe. 2019 draft.
18 with Dante Pettis, I believe, was a Niners draft.
2018 draft. Okay, yeah. And I don't even remember. I think it was a wide receiver out of Memphis was the 3rd wide receiver that the Green Bay Packers took. But it's been a few years.
3 guys. They drafted 3 receivers, kind of similar. They were all kind of like taller, longer,
3+, yeah,
kind of guys. Who was that there? I feel like the guy that we're not mentioning maybe was the guy that when we saw them, it was like, oh, he might be the best of the 3. and he's probably the only one that's out the league right now.
I think he was the first one drafted of the three. I think they went like 3rd round, 4th round, 6th round, or something like that with the 3 wide receivers.
I gotta look.
Okay, you look that up. Valdes-Scantling had the best career of those 3 wide receivers. A few years in Green Bay, went to Kansas City for a couple years, got a ring in Kansas City. Spent last season between 2 teams, the Buffalo Bills, New Orleans Saints. Spent some time with Clint Kubiak there, and then was with the Seattle Seahawks in camp, and then released, and then now with the San Francisco 49ers. For how long, I don't know. And he hasn't lit the world on fire since his best year being his first year with the Kansas City Chiefs, his best year recently. He had 42 catches that season, 16 yards per catch, a couple touchdowns, 687 receiving yards. And then in the couple of seasons since then, 2023, he had 21 catches for 315 and a touchdown, 2 catches with Buffalo last year, 17 catches with New Orleans. So 19 total catches for about 400 yards or so last year. So he hasn't been a big part of any offense in recent history, and has really been known as a one-trick pony downfield guy, kind of low efficiency player. I'm not sure how much Kyle Shanahan's going to love him from a route running standpoint, but he does bring a certain specific, X outside downfield wide receiver skill set. It's a skill set that I think has been kind of missing from the 49ers. And so maybe he'll add a little something in the short term. I don't know how much he's going to add, how much playing time he's going to get. And there might be a little competition now with a few more veterans back on the roster. So we'll see how this all starts to shake out here as we head toward week number 1.
I think he's going to add a little bit more than the receiver that was drafted ahead of him in that draft by Green Bay Packers, and it was Jawan Moore out of Missouri. Yes. You're right on the M part, okay. But out of Missouri. And it's just interesting thing with Moore, he hasn't played after 2018. So in 2018, that season, he had 2 catches on 3 targets. He played in 12 games for Green Bay Packers and has not been seen, at least in the NFL, ever since. So I don't know what the hell happened there. The NFL, humble you isn't quite the word, but if you don't learn how to be a professional and learn fast, a lot of guys will flame out really quick. And we saw that with Jawan Moore. But you were right about the how they were drafted. Well, you were close to being right. 4th round, 5th round, 6th round. 4th round was Jawan Moore. 5th round was Valdes-Scantling. 6th round was Equanimous St. Brown. So
there you go. I remember that really well because it's just so rare to see that happen where a team drafts all those guys in a row at the same position. The Green Bay Packers have been doing that quite a bit. That's kind of their thing now, is they draft a bunch of guys at the same position to try to fix it. And I think the 49ers took a page out of that book with the defensive tackles. They ended up cutting the undrafted tackle in, speaking of Valdez's, Sebastian Valdes, and he did clear waivers. So welcome back, Sebastian Valdes, to the 49ers practice squad. More on the practice squad coming up, Croc. What do you think about the reported interest in Kendrick Bourne?
Well, man, it's always justice for Kendrick Bourne. I used to have that hashtag, and I just felt like he was a guy, speaking of undrafted guys, and making the most of an opportunity. And he had a big opportunity with the 49ers in 2017, the first class for Kyle Shanahan. And there were opportunities for guys like himself, Trent Taylor, just trying to make their way into the league. And he clearly carved out a role for himself. And we see that now with Jawan Jennings playing a very similar role that Kendrick Bourne played. And to see what he did in New England, where, he was a guy that everybody loved, and obviously he had the injury. But, man, I mean, the fact that he's had this career and been in the league this long as an undrafted guy who ran a 4.7, it's been really amazing to see, and it should be inspiring for a lot of guys, but he continues to work really hard. And I think he's someone who could come to the 49ers. Let's say I don't know how long Jawan Jennings will be hurt, but I think Kendrick Bourne is someone that definitely could come in and play that role. Now, does he give you the same big body frame and blocking that you get from Jawan Jennings to that extent? Maybe not, but there was times Kendrick Bourne was the best red zone target for the 49ers, and he was good at it. And that was with guys available like Deebo Samuel, George Kittle and those guys, and still Kendrick Bourne was one of the guys that they would go to third down, red zone, and he would score, 4 or 5 touchdowns. So I think Kendrick Bourne still has value. I think he's definitely a guy that can fill in with this 49ers team that is a little banged up with a lot of the key guys that they would ideally like to have out there. But when you don't have them out there and you have a Ricky Pearsall, maybe a Jawan Jennings, we'll see what happens with him. I think Kendrick Bourne is the perfect person to come in and at the very least fill in for at least a quarter of the season.
Next, John Lynch's comments on what's going on with with Jawan Jennings. Jawan Jennings had at some time in between when Kyle said he didn't formally request a trade until now, he did formally request a trade apparently from the 49ers. What the 49ers have to say about that and Jawan Jennings' injury and the 49ers, nobody claimed from the cuts that the 49ers made. They did make one claim, though. So we'll get to that, practice squad, and a whole lot more next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks back again this season, and the daily fantasy platform that lets you turn your football predictions into real rewards. Preseason is already in the books, and college football isn't far behind being ready for we are right there. We are in the thick of it now with college football getting going. NFL season starts next week. So whether you got your eye on a big name quarterback or breakout running backs, PrizePicks makes it easy to get in the game. So we have this weekend, PrizePicks offering major max discount. Max discount number 1 is the weekly flyer here at PrizePicks. Avery Johnson max discount. We've got Saturday, 9 a.m. versus Iowa State. That is 0.5 passing yards is all you need. And so we got a Dak Prescott max discount in the NFL. That's for the Thursday nighter. All you need is that half yard. So 0.5 passing yards, max discount, Thursday nighter, Dak Prescott. So either you want to go college or pros, you can find it. So download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 play. PrizePicks, run your game. Talked about this last week, and I really got to let the folks out there know about my favorite new jeanswear brand, that is Doer, and they are about to open a new store in San Francisco this Friday, August 29th. I'm going to be there. I've honestly been living in my jeans, the performance denim. They've completely changed the game for me, and the timing couldn't be better because Doer is opening that brand new store in Hayes Valley on August 29th this Friday, and let me tell you why it's worth making the trip. I've been wearing my Doer jeans, working, running around town, went out to see a show with some friends and see some bands last night, in fact, in the city, which was a lot of fun in the Mission District. Sporting events, they never miss because they look phenomenal. They feel phenomenal, but they have 5 times the stretch of traditional denim. The Cool Max technology regulates your temperature, wicks away moisture, perfect for those unpredictable San Francisco days and nights. Doer combines classic jean wear style with the comfort and performance of athletic wear without sacrificing style. And Doer will be opening a brand new store in Hayes Valley August 29th. Head on over to 567 Hayes Street and mention our code LOCKEDONSF in store for 15% off your first order, or go to shopdoer.com/LockedOnSF. That's Doer, DUER, for 15% online. Trust me, once you try them, you'll never want to wear anything else. Okay, Croc. Jawan Jennings. We've been kind of wondering, it's like, man, is the calf for real? Is it really nagging him, or is it the contract thing? And John Lynch tried to put most of this to bed and kind of tell it straight with Jawan Jennings right now. Jawan Jennings at some time had requested a trade. The 49ers are not trading him. They have moved past that, period, according to John Lynch. Didn't sound like there was a new contract imminent, but he also said 2 things can be true. He actually is hurt. He does have a calf injury, and he does want a new contract. So both of those things are true, we know, for Jawan Jennings. Will he come back and play without a new contract? Will the 49ers give him a contract before he comes back and plays? Will any of that happen before week 1? The 49ers are hopeful he'll be out there for week 1, but With veteran receivers they're bringing in, it feels like that is becoming less and less likely that Kendrick Bourne is going to be ready, or I keep calling him Kendrick Bourne now. That Jawan Jennings is going to be ready for week 1. I mean, he took his spot. They can't be on the same roster at the same time, can they?
It seems like a bit of overkill. Guys that can't quite outrun coverage, but physical, better hands, I would say, by Jawan Jennings. Matter of fact, talk better hands. Forgot to mention this with Valdes-Scantling. I've never looked at his drop rate, but it feels like in key moments, like if there's a drop that's happening, whether it was Kansas City, Green Bay, any team we've seen him play, like it's him in the big moment. So I'm not sure what his drop rate is. And as fans of football, fans of sports, a lot of times fans of a team, you only notice, you notice good, but like the bad really stick out. And it feels like his drops really stick out when they happen.
Well, that's not great if it's Marquez Valdes-Scantling and Sky Moore as the 2 and 3 in week 1, because that's the thing that's dogged both of those former Chiefs players is dropsies. So Kendrick Bourne, a little higher efficiency player. I talked about MVS being sort of a low efficiency guy, downfield throws, some drops. It's not really what the 49ers offense is about. So interesting fit there. And Kendrick Bourne probably better fit. The roles would be redundant, I think, for Kendrick Bourne and Jawan Jennings. So I feel like Bourne, you got to wait on him unless you think Jennings is not going to be in there. That's the way I feel about it. And how much does I guess I haven't watched enough Bourne the last 2 seasons. How much does he have left is what I question. Maybe there's a lot more left there than I think for a player who just got released from a really bad football team with not a lot of good wide receivers.
He looks like Kendrick Bourne.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, now he was never a burner. He was never a guy that was going to win with, downfield, speed or acceleration. It's really more kind of the underneath stuff and being crafty to be able to create separation. And he always had some, really solid twitch. And, the cool thing with all these guys now, like all of them, and I don't know if you've noticed this. I definitely noticed it because I have a son that's 18 and he watches one of my boys, he watches all this like stuff on YouTube. All of these football players, it feels like it's about 90% of them. They all have their own YouTube channels and they post their workouts and they post all their stuff on there. It's like they all have a camera crew or a person following them around with the camera. So I've watched Kendrick Bourne's super random, but I've seen several episodes or of his videos of him working out, and it just looks like Kendrick Bourne. It looks like Kendrick. I want to say the last one I watched was probably like this offseason with him and Drake May and my guy of Washington State, Kyle Williams, who was just drafted to the New England Patriots, I believe, as well. I think they were all working out together.
Yeah.
Kendrick Bourne was there, and he looked like Kendrick Bourne. So how much juice does he have in live action with the DB in front of him? Not quite sure, but it looks about the same.
Yeah, Kyle Williams cost Kendrick Bourne his job, I have a feeling, because I think he's going to be in the starting lineup. So fancy sleeper, by the way. Kyle Williams.
A little bit more juice. He's moving a little different.
Yeah.
Guy has some juice. I feel like he was one of the more underrated receivers. And if he would have gone to a team like the 49ers, I think he would have done very well. Like now, he went to the New England Patriots. I'm not sure with Drake May just how efficient their offense is going to be with him at quarterback. Maybe he is like, first and second year Josh Allen, and all of a sudden we see him just take this big jump. But I don't know. A guy like Kyle Williams, I feel like can kind of just get lost and like passed on a team like that with that kind of quarterback as opposed to what he could have been on the 49ers.
What could have been? He'd probably be.
Why couldn't he get released and the 49ers claim him on waivers?
Well, he'd probably be on IR if he got drafted by the 49ers, though. That's the problem. So everybody cleared waivers. Do you remember last year's draft, 4th round defensive tackle drafted by the Jaguars, Jordan Jefferson, big defensive tackle? He's a guy that I don't really remember. I was like, man, usually I got the scouting report ready to go. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that prospect. He was this kind of player. I don't have that. I just don't remember Jordan Jefferson in last year's draft, which is really odd for a guy who was drafted in the 4th round out of big school, big bodied player. But I went to my guy, Tony Wiggins, the host of Locked On Jaguars. And I said, what's going on with Jordan Jefferson? What's the scouting report there? Why is he available a year after being drafted, which usually is not a good sign? He said he's massive, looks the part, just didn't seem to take the next step in year 2 with a new coaching staff that wasn't the staff and GM that drafted him. Not a mover laterally. Team really needed him, but had to go trade for Colin Saunders because they didn't see, quote unquote, it with Jefferson, I guess, is what Amp Wig on Twitter, Shop Talking Wig, Tony Wiggins of Locked On Jaguars. Interesting. So, like, looks the part, but didn't play football good enough. And the Niners, after claiming him, had to create a roster spot. So, after one day on the 53-man roster, Evan Anderson got the axe, who is built somewhat similar, bigger body, and again, another power defensive tackle for the 49ers, Croc.
You know, that's tough because a lot of times with guys like that who were just drafted, if there's anything, they usually get traded. And we've seen that with a few guys, right? Like the kid, the receiver from the Broncos, where it's like, okay, a little something there. Hey, we can get a 6th-round pick for him. Or I think he was like a 6th or 7th-round pick. They got a 4th for him. Sometimes you'll see a late-round pick where, you know, just for another team to get the opportunity to get this guy. But just to cut him or release him or waive him just outright, I feel like that doesn't say a whole lot, or maybe it does say a lot about what this guy is as an NFL player, where they were just like, nah, just we're good. Just let him go. When you first mentioned his name, you're like, oh, Jordan Jefferson. I'm like, oh, Justin Jefferson's big brother that played at LSU. And you're like, well, this guy played at LSU, but he's definitely not his big brother because he was just drafted and he plays defensive tackle, not quarterback for LSU.
This made me wonder about what we saw in camp this year. Sebastian Valdez did clear waivers for the 49ers, has been signed now back to the practice squad for the 49ers. More on the practice squad and more on this defensive line group for the Niners. What to expect. And interesting that the Niners are the team that's buying. And usually they're the team that's selling these players that are getting claimed from their roster by other football teams. Speaks to the depth of the 49ers roster we'll get into next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers presented by Rugiet. Guys, I'm sure you've heard of Viagra or Cialis, and maybe you've even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugiet Ready. Rugiet Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pill that can take hours, Rugiet's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast, on average, in 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. And all you got to do is head over to Rugiet.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL to get 15% off today. Again, that is Rugiet, Rugiet.com/LockedOnNFL, and use promo code LockedOnNFL for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, and manufacturing review. Please visit the Rugiet website for full safety information. Man, we're almost there. FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. You don't want to miss it with FanDuel. Making sure you are ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 at FanDuel. And if your first $5 bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I haven't seen them give away that much money. $300 in bonus bets to use to bet on anything. Weekly lines. They've already got the weekly lines for the NFL season all the way through week 18 at FanDuel. Tons of prop bets for the season. Of course, college football and everything else you want to get involved with, you can find at FanDuel. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and get started. That is FanDuel.com. Place your first $5 bet and get $300 in bonus bets. So are we seeing the reality of the depth of the 2025 49ers play out here in this waiver wire period, Croc? Because the 49ers cut a guy that we thought, oh man, there's a pretty good chance that Sebastian Valdez will get snapped up by another team because he put some good tape out there in the preseason. But in reality, did he just look good against not great competition at defensive tackle on the 49ers roster? And when teams throughout the league were looking at the 49ers, they're like, well, I don't know. I don't really like anybody in that group. And the 49ers are like, yeah, we need to get better in this group. So we're actually going to pluck a guy that was cut off another roster and get rid of another guy that we actually kept ahead of Valdes on the 53-man roster instead. Do you think this kind of speaks to the depth on the 49ers roster right now? And maybe we kind of overrated Valdes potentially because of who his competition was in camp with the 49ers, which might not have been that great.
Yeah, one thing that people need to realize is these NFL teams have personnel like scouts. So they have these guys who are evaluating all like potential guys that may become available. Right? So every team has it. So teams watch, like all other 31 teams watched Valdes, and they all said, we have better options than whatever he is right now. And the 49ers not only said that they would like a better option, they went out and got a better option and brought him to a guy that other teams may have passed on as well. So how good is Valdes really? I think is what you're asking.
Yeah.
And right now the NFL is telling you maybe he needs to do a little bit more developing in some aspects that maybe wasn't quite clear to a lot of the fan base watching the games.
I still liked what I saw with Valdes. I think he's got an opportunity to stick with the 49ers. Good news that he wasn't claimed and he was brought back instantly to the practice squad for the Niners. And according to Matt Barrows, there was a lot of interest around the NFL for teams to bring him onto practice squads, but nobody was ready to claim Sebastian Valdes. So Jordan Jefferson is now added to the roster and Evan Anderson is out. There's still one more spot on the practice squad, though. Let's go through the practice squad that the 49ers have put together. A couple of interesting names that they brought in from outside the organization. Most of the names are familiar that were in camp with the 49ers. One guy not coming to the practice squad is Jeff Wilson, who has signed to the Miami Dolphins practice squad. I know a lot of people are talking about Frank Gore Jr. He ended up on the Bills practice squad. But the 49ers did add a running back, and that is Raiders running back Sincere McCormick, who is not a fast player. I think he ran 4.60 before the draft last year. He is 5'8.5", 205 pounds, ran a 4.60 40, 159 10-yard split, 33.5-inch vertical. And he kind of, to be honest with you, he kind of profiles very similar. It's the 2022 draft, not last year's draft, 2022 draft, Sincere McCormick. He kind of profiles similarly to Corey Kiner, who the 49ers waived with an injury and actually came up with an injury settlement with him instead of putting him on IR for the year. So Corey Kiner is going to have an opportunity to come back this season, potentially with the 49ers or another team. So his season is actually not over after the injury settlement. But Sincere McCormick, similar player, kind of built thickly, low to the ground, contact balance, not a super explosive runner from a long speed standpoint. And he's working back from a torn ACL and LCL as well. So that is Sincere McCormick. And Adrian Martinez, who was not on my radar at all, a quarterback from my backyard, Hanford, California, played college ball at, let me go back to Adrian Martinez, because he had a weird ride in college. So he committed to Cal, but then ended up going to Nebraska, and then also played for the Kansas State Wildcats. Last played in the NFL with Robert Saleh's New York Jets. On the practice squad, kind of bounced around a couple of teams, played in the UFL, and actually won the 2024 UFL championship and was MVP of the UFL in the championship game. So big time UFL player Adrian Martinez now on the practice squad, dual threat quarterback out of California for the 49ers. Do you have any thoughts on Sincere McCormick or Adrian Martinez?
I remember Martinez coming out of high school. He was a big Elite 11 guy and was a big time college recruit.
Clovis West High, by the way.
Clovis West. All right. Yeah. I'm very familiar with Clovis West. I got the great opportunity to coach against them last season. Matter of fact, shout out to my guy, Jamar Howard, his son, JJ, big time recruit right now, quarterback over there at Clovis West. So they might be becoming a quarterback factory with some of the things they're doing there. But man, he was a big recruit coming out, and it just didn't kind of materialize at the college level. And then now you see, I don't know, some ability, like you said, kind of more of a dual threat type of guy. I'm curious to see what the 49ers kind of think about him. Do they think maybe they can build on whatever accuracy he has? And if so, then maybe they have someone who could be, a legit kind of backup quarterback.
So here's the official practice squad for the San Francisco 49ers. A lot of these players were in camp with the 49ers and were recently cut. So the 49ers brought back cornerback Eli Apple, which was cut. He was cut earlier on in camp. Junior Bergen, 7th round pick, the only draftee that the 49ers didn't keep. He's now back on the practice squad. Safety Derek Canteen, wide receiver Robbie Chosen, defensive end Travis Gibson, linebacker Jalen Graham, center Drake Nugent, linebacker Corey Robinson, wide receiver Malik Turner, defensive tackle Sebastian Valdez, as we mentioned, tight end Braden Willis, guard Nick Zakel, and I'm missing one, defensive end William Bradley King. So those so far, and I believe they have space for one more player on the practice squad. That is now currently the practice squad for the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, no big takeaway there, but congratulations to all those guys just earning another opportunity at the NFL level.
Here's an interesting note. The 49ers swapped cut players. So the 49ers signed Marquez Valdes-Scantling after he was released by the Seahawks, and then the Seahawks signed linebacker Chaz Surratt after he was released by the San Francisco 49ers, adding them not to the practice squad, but their active roster. So there you go. Chaz Surratt now going to play for the enemy in week 1.
Yeah, Chaz Surratt, guy that, was like initially like a quarterback at North Carolina and ended up converting to more of a linebacker position. And, I was curious to see how it would work for the 49ers, but to see him get a legit opportunity to be added to the 53-man roster on another NFL team, that's got to be pretty exciting.
And by the way, just a quick practice note here before we go. Defensive end Michael Williams, defensive tackle CJ West, safety Richie Grant, cornerback Fabian Moreau, quarterback Mac Jones, and left guard Ben Barch were all back in uniform and on the practice field in the early portion of the Monday practice after cut downs for the 49ers this week. Dominic Pooney, they're hoping will be back for week 1. And that is kind of the news and notes here for the San Francisco 49ers. A lot of stuff thrown at you, a lot of waiver wire madness and a lot of movement around the NFL, and we're still not done. So we're probably gonna have some more signings tomorrow, maybe some more movement, who knows, maybe still some trades and some other bigger moves in the works as well for the 49ers. So stay tuned here to Locked On 49ers. We'll have all of it for you. We'll break it all down, and pretty soon we'll have that roster set and be ready for some real actual regular season NFL football. That is coming up real soon. So stay tuned. Subscribe on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. One more quick note, big moment for Locked On. College football fans, Locked On and Fire TV present College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly preview. And you can catch College Football Kickoff every Thursday throughout the season only on Fire TV. It's the kind of college football preview only Locked On can do. So check that out. Every Thursday, College Football Kickoff throughout the season only on Fire TV. Croc and I back tomorrow right here, Locked On 49ers.